Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? Great. How's your new year going so far, Johnny? Going great. Awesome. Well, welcome. My name is Martin Gillespie. I'm very privileged to serve here at the America First Policy Institute as Executive Director. And what a fitting start to our 2026 here at AFPI as we cover and really focus on the issues and strategies that will define America First in 2026. We are coming up here at AFPI on our 5th year anniversary, and my God City and so many others here that were really there from the start. What a 5 years it's been. A lot of memories. Sometimes it feels like more than like 5 decades, but it's been quite a ride. At this point in AFPI, in the first year since President Trump came back into the Oval Office, we are privileged and blessed to call upon our alumni that feature 7 cabinet secretaries, over 85 AFPI team members who are deployed. We like that word, deployed, into the administration. 91% of our federal recommendations from our original America First Agenda book in the first year alone have already been fully implemented or advanced toward implementation. And that's something different about AFPI. You could say, yes, it's a policy institute, but we have a bias for action. So you can write whatever papers you want, but you got to get it done. And you got to get it into law to benefit our fellow American citizens. We are now active with active state chapters in 10 states, and that number is going up pretty much each month. One of our really robust state chapters is in Minnesota, where our team there is helping expose the kleptocracy that Tim Walz and his rogue allies have perpetrated on the taxpayers of not only Minnesota, but also federal taxpayers as well. Our core identity here at AFPI is we are the home of the America First movement. We serve the movement, full stop. That's what we exist to do. We are the voice. I remember this from the New York Hilton when President Trump won election in 2016, and Kellyanne was there, obviously, as the campaign manager. And they said, the forgotten men and women of America are forgotten no longer. And that is our principal constituency here at AFPIers, the people that don't have high-paid lobbyists, the people that have hope for America, but not too much hope for the system. That's what we want to be a voice for here in our nation's capital. But we're not here today to look in the rearview mirror. We're here to look ahead. We know how important this year is. I've been around 47 years, and only 6 of those years prior to last January has there been unified Republican control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. To illustrate that a little further, looking forward this year and outlining sort of the headwinds that we're facing. And by the way, we love headwinds. We love challenges. The charter meeting of AFPI was held on the morning of January 7th, 2021, when Brooke and Linda and Larry came together and said, we can't let this collection of people and ideas just go into the ether. And so we love challenges, but it is true. Only twice since World War II has a president not lost seats in the House of Representatives. And given some of the events of this week, I think the majority is down to maybe 2 seats at this point. Only 4 times in the last century has a president not lost seats. And so we're very sober-minded about the challenge ahead. But our goal here has always been to not only advance America First policies, but to create very crystal clear binaries on, is your life better under America First policies or under the other regime? And we're going to continue to do that now more than ever. We have 35 U.S. Senate seats that are on the ballot this year. Naturally, we have all 435 congressional seats. We have 36 governorships. Nearly 75% of all governorships are up for election this year. And you think about state policy, and you think about 3.5 years ago, there were no states with universal school choice. Would you believe that there are now 18 states with universal school choice where kids prior to 3.5 years ago had no choice to go to a functional school who now have that? And the stakes of every one of those state races are so important to make sure these kids have hope, most especially the parents. We've seen the documentaries of parents that have to hit a lottery ticket to have their kid go to a functional school. And America First leaders and policies are changing education fundamentally for years and decades to come. There are exactly 6,122 state legislative seats that are on the ballot this year out of a total of 7,386 So that means 82% of all state legislators are up for re-election or election this year. So America First ideas must win. No, check that. We will win. Because we've seen, looking back not too far, what happens if we don't. It means impeachments, it means subpoenas, it means gridlock, and it means nothing good for the American public. We have an all-star cast today here to speak to you to set the stage for this year and the ideas and strategies that will drive the debate and drive the outcomes as we get later into the year. I'm always going to have a special fondness in my heart of hearts for my own South Jersey girl, Kellyanne Conway, who is one of our founding chairs here. It's because of Kellyanne and President Trump that no rational, sane human being will ever utter the words President Hillary Rodham Clinton. But Kellyanne has been on the ground level here at AFPI, always pushing, always scrutinizing, always make sure that we are at our very best as professional communicators and marketers of ideas, especially if you look at what's happening in New York, where now Mamdani's housing director has said, well, actually, people should just accept being permanent tenants. The stakes of the game get higher and higher, and Kellyanne is at the heart, not just for AFPI, but especially to make sure that we are always getting the tough questions to be sharper and to present our arguments in the best way possible. We also were thrilled just over a month ago to announce the new co-chair of our Making Housing Great Again initiative, Mr. Benny Johnson. I think especially now that Charlie has gone home to the Lord, Benny is now the principal voice to represent our ideas in social media, to win over those millions of hearts and minds that Charlie had done so well. And we saw Benny really sounding out very strongly this challenge of housing, how now it's the average age of a first-time home buyer is age 40. That's unimaginable. And so Benny is leading that along with our other co-chair, Ashley Hayek, who will speak as well. She very proudly serves here as our executive vice president. Looking forward to hearing them, and Jill Homan, who is our amazing deputy director of econ and trade here. So yes, we have a lot of challenges, but America First, we have solutions. We want to talk to you about that. We want to share some ideas. We want this to be an ongoing conversation throughout the year. If this year, in policy debates and in the forthcoming election, is a straight line binary of is your life better, is the country better under America First policies or not, that's a no-brainer who comes out on top of that. We can overcome history here. But it's not through a super PAC, or it's not through raising billions and carpet bombing key media markets. It's creating binaries where people know in their daily life, hey, my life's better under President Trump. My life's better under America First governors and state legislators. And that's what we're focused on here is actually if you get the policy right, this is what our founding chair, Linda McMahon, has always said. Get the policy right, and then the politics follow from there. And so that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, I just want to introduce one of our key dignitaries. There's many here, but one of our 85 alums is here, Dr. Aaron Hedlund, who very proudly serves as chief economist at the White House now. So Aaron, welcome back, and we are so thrilled and honored to have you here today. I'm going to ask my friend and colleague, Billy Atwell, who serves as our chief communications and marketing officer, to come up and introduce the first panel. So thank you, everybody.
All right, welcome on up. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, thank you all for being here. This is we're really pleased with the turnout, but we're so grateful that you're here to learn about some of the issues and strategies that we're going to be talking about, but really based on a lot of polling data that Kellyanne's team did with us. But let me start. Yes, Kellyanne Conway is a presidential campaign director. I feel like I'm telling people what they already know, but I feel like I should do this just because there's a lot of important things here. A pollster, best-selling author, former senior counselor and assistant to the President of the United States, and the founder and president of KA Consulting, LLC. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much. We've also got Ashley Hayek. She's our executive vice president here at AFPI. She's also the president of America First Works. And one of the things that she does that's really pertinent to today is she's the co-chair with Benny Johnson for Restoring the American Dream, Make Housing Great Again. So we're looking forward to that. Benny's also our national spokesperson on that issue.
We already have the hats made.
Yeah, he was showing us earlier the pictures of the hats. They had like 10,000 hats made for Make Housing Great Again. So we're going to be off to a great start with that. So what we did was we worked with Kellyanne and her team to survey in November across the country, kind of a cross-section of every demographic. We wanted to make sure it was a really important kind of broad poll. But what we did was we took the temperature of the country. We wanted to see where are people at right now, what are they feeling, what are the issues that they care most about, what are their priorities, so that we understand from a policy institute perspective, how do we devise our policies, what are the issues that we need to help them with and help resolve, and then learn what they think about our ideas. What are the America First policies that we have, and what are people's thoughts on them? That tells us, it gives a little bit of a roadmap. How far into that do we go? So that's going to form the game plan. And a lot of you all here are part of the America First movement, and we're really grateful for that, and we're hoping that with some unity and backing the right ideas, we can make a lot of really positive change here in 2026. So the good news was we've learned that a lot of the America First policies are incredibly popular. You're going to see a lot of data here, but we wanted to start with the big picture. And so that is when we pulled just the brand of America First policies, this is one of the things we did, was what do they know and what do they not know? And so actually, I'm going to start with you, actually. So here we say like favorable, 45%, and unfavorable, but I actually noticed the gap in the middle. There's a huge evangelization opportunity, I think, with the America First brand, and you'll see in a minute the popularity of the specific policy ideas, but I found that very encouraging.
Well, and I love when we get a Kellyanne poll back because it's so thorough and detailed. One of the things I started digging into in the crosstabs was the youth vote, and there's about 39% of young voters didn't really know what America First is, which to me is an incredible opportunity. So it's not that they are not necessarily not with us, or they're looking for the opportunity to join the America First movement because our policies are the ones that will work for young voters. And they'll work for women and they'll work for every demographic. But this is incredibly hopeful, especially as we head into the midterms, to explain what does America First mean and how does this positively impact your life, especially as OB3, One Big Beautiful Bill, starts coming to fruition this year.
Kellyanne, I'm curious your thoughts, in this, because that's a big gap in the middle, but I see opportunity. How did you read it when you saw that data?
The 31% heard of, no opinion, never heard of combined is the most important data point there. I think somebody could spin it as saying, well, a majority are not favorable. Someone else can say, well, only 1/4 of the nation is against something called America First policies, and who exactly are they? This means that there's information underload about very basic facts and figures and policy prescriptions being put forth by the White House, by this administration, but also by a majority in the House and Senate. And I think, Billy and Ashley and friends, that if 2025 was the year for doing hard things, then 2026, beginning right now, must be the year for communicating what was done and how it impacts you. I call it the RPI, the real people impact. And it won't matter as much, sadly, if how great the policies are, especially when they start landing with the One Big Beautiful Bill, additional energy dominance and production, the moves on housing, which are really exciting, even for this president yesterday to put out a Truth Social post about his intentions on that. None of that will matter if people don't know it. And they need to know it and associate it back with America First policies. I'm a very old person, old-fashioned, been in this movement a long time. There were years, decades, I'd say, where the Republican Party and the conservative movement had excellent messages, but they really didn't have a cohesive, compelling, memorable, persuasive, larger-than-life messenger. Check. We've got that. But we have to make sure, and frankly, it's not fair that everything's always on the president's shoulders to communicate all this. It's up to all of us. And I would say to the Republicans in Congress particularly that he'll never be on the ballot. He's not on the ballot this time. We saw in 2022 what happens when he's not on the ballot. We saw in 2025 what happens when he's not on the ballot. He is inimitable, and but he's got the special connective tissue, and it's different when he's actually not on the ballot. It's not the same to have his endorsement. It's not the same to share his policies. It's not the same to try to tweet like him or go on TV like him. He's one of one. But he's given us an entire blueprint and roadmap here. And we're going to get a little bit more granular here, Billy, but I think it's important that it's not just feel-good phraseology that compels what I would say tripartisan majorities of Americans to like certain things. But you're going to see in a little bit, and I want us to level set this way. 74% of Americans surveyed agreed that this country is not perfect, but it's still the greatest country in the world. But the same survey universe said in a different question, only 49% agree the American dream is still alive, 45% disagree. And that narrowness is so incredibly important because we need for people to feel optimistic and to feel like they have a stake and ownership in the American dream, however they define that.
Can I add one point on this? And this is kind of what Kellyanne's talking about in action. So last year during the Omaha mayor's race, we decided to test some of this, some of our messaging, if you will. And we had a control group, a small control group, and a small test group. And we started sending messages out to these voters in the test group that was, how do you feel about the city of Omaha is going? How do you feel the policies in your city are going? And we got back, oh my God, we hate this street trolley that they're trying to put in. And it was like this overwhelming, like visceral reaction to the streetcar. So we're like, well, this isn't gonna work. So we switched and we said, President Trump's policies are helping the lives of Americans. This is what the media doesn't want you to know. 80% of the media is negative against the president. Here are the facts of what the president is doing right now. And we started putting that. We were able to have an 80% response increase of positive responses back to those messages, number one. And number two, within that test group, we boosted turnout 3%. If that does not tell you that people want to know that they are bought into something that's working, they're bought into something that's positive, they need to be reminded. And that's why making sure that these messages are communicated and we're connecting the policies to the people will be absolutely critical the year ahead.
Yeah, customized communications is how you have to do it. Anything that's pre-boxed, people know right away that this isn't for them. But knowing those kinds of things, having that information is really critical. So in this slide, we looked at some proven examples. So we're going to get into the America First policies, but let's look at a few outcomes and what do people think when they actually see the outcomes of these ideas. And so here we've got gas prices at less than $3 a gallon. There's areas of the country where it's $2.50 a gallon. Haven't seen that. I remember when I interned during the Obama administration, I was paying $4 a gallon to put gas in my truck. That was painful when you're an intern. I barely survived it. But we see the reaction to arresting violent criminals. Who would have thought, right? The lowest illegal crossings in years, so the immigration policies are obviously very favorable in deporting criminal illegals, with 1.6 million self-deporting. And so when we look at this, Kellyanne, what are some of the takeaways? Because I think people, they like well-intentioned rhetoric, but when you deliver, that's all that really matters in the end. Otherwise, you lose credibility.
Absolutely. I mean, the facts and figures are the most compelling. There's the proof. There are the proof points. And we know that there's a huge contrast between the two parties right now. The other party wants to investigate and insult and impugn and impeach. And I think they're physiologically incapable of forming a sentence or answering a question. Let's say it's a 5-word sentence. They've said Trump 17 times. They're incapable of otherwise. But this is the opportunity to say, we did that. This is what happens. This is the direct result when you have bold, principled leadership and folks wanting to make a big difference. The other thing that's implicit here but needs to be said quickly is that people need to be reminded just how bad and broken it was not that long ago. The Democrats want to move right along from people named Biden or Kamala or Tim Walz. And we can't allow that because President Trump, he got elected for many reasons last year, but a big one was they broke it, I'll fix it. And the adjunct to they broke it, I'll fix it is they ignored it, I'll tackle it. They deflected, I'll do it. And so that's important too. And I think as you dig into the data, you'll see some other stuff. But look, people are always looking for an 80-20 issue. 80%, 85% kind of means you wasted a polling question because it probably is feel-good phraseology. But this is very impressive because it doesn't mean 40% disapprove of 400 criminal illegals deported 1.6. You have that high enough number of people saying, I'm not sure, I don't know, because it's the first time they're hearing it. And they'll tell you in a focus group, I'm going to go do my own independent research. No, they're not. But they need to hear it. They're not. They need to hear it again and again and again. And last point I want to make, AFPI and AFW are second to none in terms of their ability to connect directly to the voter. And I want to thank anybody who's ever supported AFPI, certainly your treasure, but really your time and your talent is most important to me. Why? Because the same people that we're trying to inspire to get out to the polls and get that turnout up 3%, which is huge in politics, we first need to make sure they know this information. The reason they'll turn out or not is if they feel like there's a reason to do that. And their excuses are many, the reasons are few. And these provide that kind of reason. So the facts and figures are the way. I know everybody wants to form a clever tweet or, go on TV, I got it, but this is what's most important. And the people can handle the truth. We have to respect the wisdom. Vice President Vance said this very recently in an extended interview, and he's absolutely correct. You've got to respect that the American people are smart, that the American people can understand and accept, not just accept, but expect to have detailed information, and we need to be the ones who provide it.
Ashley, I want your thoughts on the illegal immigration question there. 60% support deporting criminal illegals. But when we see protests and everything, it's painted by the liberals as though this is an unpopular position. But that's just not true. It's a part of our job in communications is to cut through that. I was curious what your impression of that was, because it's apparently bipartisan. I would have to imagine that at 60%.
What's surprising to me is not that it's 60%. What's surprising to me is that 159 Democrats voted against the Lake and Riley Act. And they need to be held accountable this year for that vote, because that is a very clear example of what happens when you have open border policies and allow illegal criminal aliens into our country that bring in fentanyl and traffic people and violate our country's laws. And so it doesn't surprise me at all. The second thing that I think is really important is the left wants conservatives to feel alone. They want us to feel like we don't belong to something greater, that you're odd, weird, stupid, irrelevant, a left-wing or a right-wing radical if you buy into these America First policies or into the administration's policies. And we have to remind people that these are popular ideas and these are the right ideas, and they will positively impact your life if you continue to support them.
And it should certainly embolden us. Again, there's a lot of folks in the America First movement here. This should embolden us to lean forward on the right ideas. Let's not be scared of it. So the next, we asked a lot about economic policy changes. We wanted to understand what people were thinking on this. And Kellyanne, I'm going to start with you, because when I look at like the child tax credit and tax relief, no tax on tips, a lot of these things are coming out of the One Big Beautiful Bill. But most of these didn't even begin to take effect until this month. And so we're going to see them mature and really deliver this coming year. I'm curious whether you think that these will trend upward as that happens.
They will trend upward, but I do think there's been an information communication gap, particularly coming from Capitol Hill, where people were not told all of the benefits in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And if you want people to pay attention, let alone support what you've done, you must tell them. Voters tell us what's important to them. We don't tell them, but we also have to communicate to them. They're not going to come to us. So what do I mean by that? Look, everyone knows, done and dusted, high levels of not just support, but high levels of knowledge about no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. I try not to mention it. Why? Because everybody already knows that. The president was talking about it during the campaign quite effectively and quite ubiquitously. What people don't know is that the child tax credit got doubled, and that's going to help, quote, 40 million families. What they don't know, and you'll see the data in a moment, and love, but they don't know that we have the largest one-time expansion of school choice in our nation's history through a congressional bill. Why is that important? Because that's going to help so many of these kids in failing schools in our inner cities. It's going to empower parents to decide where their child goes to school, key, and what is taught there, just by giving them a little extra money. They don't know about the depreciation. They don't know about the 100% expensing for new or expanded factories. That helps with manufacturing. And so I say it very crisply, ladies and gentlemen. The very first line of our analysis for AFPI in the polling we did in November after those disastrous elections was this, quote, Americans like most the America First policies they know least. And I want us to remember that. They like most because it strikes them as brand new information. So no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, fine. But I think we have to complement that, supplement that with all these other great benefits, and remind people that if these tax cuts that had and benefits that had been signed into law in December of 2017 had sunsetted and had not been expanded, let alone extended, then we would go back to having the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world. Why is that important? Because when we reduced it from 35%, the highest in the OECD, to 21%, below the average of 23% in the fall of 2017, what happened? Well, the C-suite didn't stuff their pockets the way the left accused them of doing. They went and they make plenty of money, got it, but they also took the savings and raised the wages on their own, not through government mandates. They went and they invested in inventory, research, personnel, better benefits for their employees and contractors. And the 100 plus corporate incursions that had existed stopped immediately. We repatriated trillions of dollars of wealth and the jobs that went with it that were parked legally overseas. So we have to remind people, and then I think we remind them, Billy, that this all happened, to Ashley's point, with not a single Democratic vote, including the 11 Democrats that sit in districts that they won and President Trump won on the exact same day on the exact same ballot just over a year ago. We can't have a single Democrat put aside their Trump derangement syndrome, stage 5, no cure, vaccine, therapeutic, no help. It just attacks your nervous system, removes your sense of humor, and makes you crazy, batshit crazy. And you can bleep me if you need to. But the fact is that they can't even put that aside to say, you know what, I don't like President Trump, I didn't vote for him, I wish he weren't there again. But this Tax Cut and Jobs Act for the last 8 years, has helped the people in my district, in my state. They can't even put that aside. So we must let people know there is a distinction with a difference between the two parties, and it's shown in pieces of data like this.
And you know, we just got the numbers from the third quarter of last year that the GDP is up more than was expected, even by government estimates. Gross domestic income is up, consumer spending is up. And when we look at 100% of expensing of new factories, wages rising, trade deals covering half the globe, and reported job growth, that was absent that information. And so this is where we see the policies leading, and you've talked about this, they leading the polls sometimes, where we're kind of getting information that verifies what we thought after the fact, but this was taken all before that information was known. So, people love nothing more than their children. Between the three of us, there's 13 kids. I thought about that as well, like, oh, we're all big families, yeah. If we had Terry Schilling up here, it'd be like 25, I think, so yeah, our good friend. So when I look at this, I think about that bottom number actually kind of caught me the most because it is the most audacious of all the policies. Because expanding education savings accounts is important. You know, we're educating people on what that is, removing financial burden, extending tax credits, like you were talking about the education scholarship tax credit that's coming. The funding that we're seeing here, but returning the authority of K through 12 education to parents and local control, thereby eliminating the Department of Education, is at 50%. That is an enormous number. Kelly, I'm curious if that surprised you or what you thought about that.
It surprises me mightily, but remember, this is a great example of finishing your sentence. We were highly critical of the 2022 campaigns and certainly results. We didn't see red wave, so we didn't say red wave. Other people made millions saying red wave. That never came. Why? Because we didn't see candidates finishing their sentences. Inflation, Afghanistan, Biden, Hunter, laptop. Those aren't sentences. Those are barely words. Again, this finishes a sentence. If you just asked, close the Department of Education, it's not going to be 50%. You're telling people why you would do that, why you would abolish a department in our government. And you're saying because the authority of a K through 12, I don't have to look at it, education belongs with the parents. And given what's happened the last few years, the exposure during COVID of what actually is being taught and not being taught to our kids for many parents who otherwise may not have known and may have had suspended, belief in the system. This is important because it's parent education to parents and local control. We are saying essentially two things. Let the money follow the child so that parents have the right to say where their children go to school and what is taught there. The curriculum piece is important there too. I see way too many conservatives only talking about the curriculum, only talking about the books, only talking about the trans policies. Remember, the threshold here is that you have a right to say what education fits your child's needs. And if you have more than one child, then you have different needs because you have different individuals. And so this allows those parents to do that. But that happens if you close the Department of Education. If we just say abolish the department, I mean, again, being old, I was there, a baby pollster in the mezzanine section during the Contract with America for Newt Gingrich, who's a mentor of mine. If we just say abolish the departments, some people like that, but most get nervous because they say that they're change makers and independent thinkers and revolutionaries, and they go to McDonald's and Chick-fil-A every night in order number 3. So just in case they're not joining a revolution or making a change or exercising an option, just in case, we're telling them remember, finish the sentence. People accept it and they expect it and they deserve it. And this shows that. Also, I just wanted to go through the others quickly. The left is not for this. I met Cory Booker quite by accident in the mid-90s, probably almost 30 years ago, at a school choice conference in New Jersey. He was introduced to me by somebody he ended up being the guy's groomsman. Nobody's ever been his groomsman. And moving right along. And I used to say that about Obama, like, I don't know if you were like the groomsman in the President of the United States wedding, wouldn't we know your name? Like, I would say, like, where are the college friends? Where are the groomsmen? Anyway, that would be a different panel. Invite me back. Yeah, but on this one, seriously speaking, I met Cory Booker at a school choice conference when he was mayor of Newark. He was living in Hoboken, but he was mayor of Newark. Now he's senator, then he runs for president. He gets the same number of electoral votes everybody in this room got. That's 0. But guess what? He was for school choice. I met him at a school choice conference. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 30 years ago. He's not for school choice anymore. As the number of kids in this country, in the state of New Jersey, increases, the need increases, the number of Democrats that are for this has decreased proportionally. But look where America is. They're on the wrong side of America. You're on the right side of history if you support school choice and charter schools and alternatives to failing schools. So reduce the burden on families, expand tax credits. These are not government mandates. This isn't price controls. This isn't more money. It's using it more wisely. Universal education savings accounts, 70%. This is unheard of. But people understand a savings account makes them an investor. Nobody ever takes a rental car to the car wash before they return it to Hertz or Avis. When your name is on it, when you own it, when you have agency and authority, when it's about your kid or someone else's kid, because you can set up an ESA, then they're there. And I have to say, AFPI was a tip of the spear on this in 2021, 2022. I'm chair of the Center for the American Child. What our Republican governors like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kim Reynolds and so many others, Kristi Noem at the time, were doing on ESAs early was remarkable. And I think that they have helped to fertilize the ground so that people are used to that now. If you can use an education savings account for everything from tuition to summer classes to buying backpacks and pens and pencils to transportation for the child to school, you're allowing the parent to decide how to use that. And that let the funding follow the child. We're going to pay it anyway. And I would argue we should be paying for it. Maybe not as much as we do, but we should be. And guess what? Like, whatever. My kids, you know what my school choice is? I can afford to send my kids to the school of my choice, as does Ashley and as do many people. But we have to worry about the kids who can't access that. And so rather than just, oh my God, nobody in Baltimore can read or write, nobody in Chicago, I got it. But what's the solution? Lead with the solution. If you lead with the problem, we sound like everybody else. People will change the channel. You want them to pump up the volume. Billy, excuse me. Ashley, you want them to say, okay, you just said something. It makes a lot of sense to me. Can we really do that? Yeah, it's in the one big beautiful bill. Yeah, Secretary McMahon and President Trump have been all over this. We don't need a Department of Education when we have parents and local school boards. And I'm really happy to say that we continue to see so many brave men and women running for school board, people who never consider themselves to be political, let alone candidates. They feel that they can make an impact. They don't want to run for Congress. They don't want to be president of the United States. They don't want to be president of anything. They just want to make and that is the most elected position in our country. Over 90% of school board positions are elected. And so to continue to encourage good people to do that is how we turn this around.
We have Erica Donalds chairs our policy, our education policy here. Ashley, you and I work with her a lot. I know she was overjoyed with these numbers. Is there anything you wanted to say just to kind of wrap out this section?
The only thing I'll say is there are some Democrat governors who are buying into the One Big Beautiful Bill. Jared Polis buying into the tax credit for parents, which is fantastic. And I think they realize they need to. But the ones that are not are incredibly out of touch. And I will say, I think this comes down to parental rights, too. And something that we tested in 2023 just with our voter contact is, do you support protecting children versus parental rights? And supporting parents' rights, hands down 3-1. And it's just about being able to decide, to Kellyanne's point, what is best for your child. I have 5 children in 3 different schools, and it's to best fit their needs. And that's what you have to do in order to make sure that your children are successful and you accommodate them. And I think that that's just so important. And the more we can elevate this, especially this year, the better off we'll be as a movement. And by the way, thanks to Kellyanne for her work on this, we were able to pass school choice legislation in dozens of states across the country at a time when the cartel of the teachers union had a stranglehold on politicians that was holding people back. And I think the next target needs to be on dismantling that cartel of the teachers union that has, influenced and infiltrated our education system so poorly and in so many ways.
So you're both going to have to control yourself on this next one because we're talking about healthcare, and I know you're both very, very passionate about healthcare. But we did some polling on this, and obviously these numbers are extraordinary, like the other ones, like price transparency with insurers and hospitals. That's a big one. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. We never knew what we were going to pay when we came out of it, and it could have crippled our family, if we hadn't had good insurance. Stopping Medicare from overpaying for brand name drugs, expanding health savings accounts, like we saw popularity with the education savings account, and making sure that WIC and SNAP are not buying junk food. That it's buying healthy foods that actually nourish people's bodies. These are all extremely popular issues. Ashley, you're doing a ton of work throughout the state. You're very tuned in to what people think on the ground level. Healthcare can be a major budget line for a lot of people. This can make or break a month for people. Are they going into the red or the black? When you see this, what opportunities do you think there are for us in creating excellent public policy that address the needs that people have?
Well, a couple thoughts. Our Vice President, J.D. Vance, gave an interview yesterday, I believe, that talked about how the left only cares about attacking the president, whereas the right wants to do what's best for the American people, and nothing can be more evident than in our healthcare system. But we do a terrible job of communicating that. We are for transparency. We are for accountability. We are for affordability. They are for impeachments. That's it. It's pretty simple. And so this is going to be an incredibly important point moving into the election year. I saw after Maduro was arrested and being brought into the United States, some of the talking points from the left were, how can you do this when healthcare? And that's the go-to talking point of the left, but yet they don't provide any solutions. They don't care about transparency, and most of them are bought and paid for by Big Pharma. So we have a really big opportunity and obligation to clarify the president's record on transparency and affordability as it pertains to healthcare. 2 other data points that I think are important. The senior vote for midterm election increases about 17% in midterm years. And seniors are greatly affected because of fixed income and because of more health issues that arise as you get older. So to be able to appeal to senior voters this year will be incredibly important for us. And number 2, women make 80% of the healthcare decisions in their households. So as we look at that, the female vote, if you will, this is also going to be important for us to make sure that we're communicating that to women who are making the healthcare decisions, that they understand what the president's administration and policies have done for hardworking families.
So we also asked, we do a lot of ag policy here at AFPI, and so we wanted to ask some questions on this, and these were 2 that really stood out. Kellyanne, I think one of the kind of the consequences of importing as much food as we have over the last 10, 20 years is it takes a real hit on our ranchers and our farmers. I was extremely encouraged, especially my mom's side of the family, we're all farmers, that there's an 85% desire to invest more in our farms. Like, people are getting the value of local, like, domestically produced food. Yes. Yeah.
Look, if we're about made in the USA and investing in America, this is sort of ground zero. This is the floor of that. And just yesterday, if you knit together this and the previous slide about healthcare, which included safe and healthy foods in the WIC program, that our friend Secretary Brooke Rollins, along with Larry Kudlow and Linda McMahon, the brain trust behind the founding of AFPI, she stood there with Secretary Kennedy and obviously Dr. Oz and Marty McCary and others, and made this big announcement. This is important because she said a few things that were very important. So this is not mandatory or compulsory. These are guidelines, always have been. But where the government can make some soft regulations and requirements is in the stocking. I listened very carefully to what she was saying, that if you want to play ball and actually be part of the distribution that gets food into our bodies and into our communities, then you have to play by these particular rules, and this is important. I know Michelle Obama had the Let's Move campaign. She told us to do jumping jacks and planted a garden. I think that had some merit to it, but it didn't go far enough because it just that was it. It was like check the box. And I remember watching a report on ABC, a local ABC affiliate at the time in a hotel, and they showed every single apple that was put on a student's tray had gone into the trash in that particular middle school. Well, sure, nobody's chopping it up for them and putting it next to peanut butter or honey or making it nutritious, delicious, and fun for them. So I think that this is great, and these are policies that, again, I said 80-20, it's hard to get, but this is invest in farms, farmlands. I mean, why are we eating shrimp that's made in the sewers of China? It makes no sense to people. Exactly. Now you're going to have something else for dinner. Sorry, shrimp industry. My son gave me that one. He's like Mr. MAGA, Mr. Privacy, and people don't even know I have a son. They're like, but anyway, he's like, Mom, why are you like, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to use that. But in any event, seriously speaking, if you go, but can you just go back to healthy again, a moment? I want to talk about this because I was there all 4 years in the first term, and I had healthcare in my portfolio. And when Susie Wiles and Jason Stephen Miller and others said, could you come down to Mar-a-Lago on the president's birthday, June 14th, a year ago, 2024, and talk about debate prep. And they gave me the easy issues like healthcare and abortion and a few others, and it's really fun. And but I just say this, like, you're never going to see that. I really don't use social media that much. I don't talk about when I talk to the president. But I'm saying this to you because I brought with me a single-spaced slide. I had two of them. Everything President Trump did during COVID, and everything President Trump did on healthcare non-COVID. And I could hardly fit it on one. And because we had made it public one time, we had it, Brooke Rollins and I actually, when she was at DPC, had it on a board. And we had it in the Oval, and the president let the press in. They were interested in that. They were interested in whatever challenge coin was on the desk or whatever tie the president was wearing that day. But they missed this. So because it was public, we were able to talk about it. And it is unbelievable what President Trump did in the first term. Price transparency, surprise medical billing, AHPs, associated health plans. That helped roughly 12 million Americans who are sole proprietors in their carpenter business, or somebody has 2 employees in their welding business, but can't really access quality, affordable health care. So, ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line to all of this is stop with the gas and groceries only. Talk about the floor, not the ceiling. It's a 5-year-old example. When I hear gas and groceries, and I hear a politician say gas and groceries, that's wonderful. Healthcare and housing. So get the G&G and advance it one letter. This is easy. Housing and healthcare is what breaks the back of the family budgets. The price of housing went up 30% under Biden-Harris, rent and mortgage. The cost of healthcare has gone up and has not kept pace with quality and access and consistency and delivery of outcomes. So we need to be able to say that. And I'll end on this note. You've heard me, AFPI has heard it before, but unfortunately I still have to say it because it's still true. For years, decades, Republicans had a double-digit deficit versus Democrats on the issue of which party do you trust more on the following issues: healthcare and education, double-digit deficits. Why are we losing to these clowns on these essential issues? Are we serious? They gave us Obamacare. They gave us individual mandates that Trump tore the heart out of and went all the way to Supreme Court to do it. They gave us teachers' unions over students. They gave us failing schools and kids who can't read or write at grade level. And we're losing to them. So we're at parity now and occasionally above the Democrats on which party do you trust more to handle education. I would love to tell you it's because we're a bunch of geniuses. No, it's called COVID and Glenn Youngkin beating Terry McAuliffe on that issue, and the parents' rights renaissance in this country. So I'd love to tell you I'm a genius and I took control of that. If I'm ever being a genius, I'll let you know. But what are we doing on healthcare? We're still losing. It's gotten a little bit better. I've seen 12%. I saw one poll recently, 8%. But we're still losing to these people on which party do you trust more in healthcare? It's because we don't say anything about it. Take the marbles out of our mouths, stop with the gas and groceries as being the floor and the ceiling, and healthcare and housing. That is the affordability crisis. That is the rising price crisis for so many Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, you can figure out gas and groceries. It hurt, and those prices are coming down. It hurt for 4 years under Biden-Harris, no doubt. But people kind of figured it out. I'm going to work from home. I'm going to take mass transit. I'm going to carpool. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to have meatless Mondays. I'm going to not go out to eat. I'm going to do leftovers. They privately figured it out. We've talked to those folks. You can't figure out how to pay the rent and mortgage if it went up 30%. You can't figure out utility bills rising. You can't figure out these ridiculous COVID-era premiums That is all the Democrats have. So if we lose to them on this issue, shame on us. We have a path here through the messaging.
Ashley, I want to come to you on this issue of safety and immigration, because we talked about here, we asked about catch and release policies for violent offenders, which we see, like, you would think that's an exceptional scenario. It's actually an extremely common scenario throughout the country, and especially in major cities. But to expose and dismantle financial networks of radical organizations, I feel like it's only becoming a mainstream issue that this even exists. People always thought that, these protests were random, but when shrink wrap pallets of bricks show up, okay, this is coordinated. There's a logistics behind this. I was wondering if you'd comment a little bit on this, because I know you've seen this in your work throughout the states. You've seen these organizations and how they function.
Well, I would say, as a grassroots activist, when I initially would read that question, I would think about Antifa and the coordinated attacks on law enforcement. But now I think about the government of Minnesota and the government of California and the Palisades not being able to be rebuilt, or the daycare fraud that we're seeing in Minneapolis, or who knows what else is going on in Chicago or New York City or any other state where they have literally avoided any form of transparency or accountability for decades. That is the radical organization and the financial organization that I'm actually most concerned about, that have been ripping off the taxpayers, that have been undermining our systems. You look at the COVID fraud that's being exposed now. There's 2 legislators in Georgia that were forced to resign that are have been indicted because of taking millions of dollars, and also in I believe in Florida, millions of dollars from COVID. That is the radical organization I think we need to focus on and highlight, because it's making it unfair for the American people. So the more that we can expose that and root that out, the better off that we're going to be.
And Kellyanne, the president took a lot of aggressive actions to suppress violent crime in a lot of major cities where the mayors and the governors were not doing it. And I'll go back to the phrase that I've heard you say before, that the president was leading the polls. We didn't have this data when he was doing that. I don't know that it was evident that that was going to be as popular as it was. I think he did it because he knew it was right. But we're seeing that it's obviously very popular with people to end this nonsense.
Look, he attempted a lot of this in his first term. He talked about it in the 4 years in between the 2 terms, and now he can execute on it. And I think that at catch and release, I will just say, some Americans are confused about that. They think that you're catching and releasing back to their home countries. You're releasing into the interior. It's again, speaking of finishing the sentences, we have to be very clear about what that is. We catch you. Where are we releasing you? Into the interior. And we trust that you're going to show up for your hearing next year. Good luck with that. But this is important, and I think even when you have words like child traffickers, sexual abusers, that's how you get what I call tripartisan agreement, majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and independents all agreeing. But it's also important to show the distinction between all immigrants and those who are, say, child traffickers, sex abusers. This is how you get more independence, how you get more young people. Even, remember, was there at the founding. I mean, when President Trump Mr. Trump came down the escalator and started talking about they're not sending us their best and their brightest, they're sending us rapists. Of course, the mainstream media distorted what he said, and he got ridiculed and roundly insulted worldwide, including by many Republicans in this town who held important positions on Capitol Hill and were running against him for president. Now it's a mainstream issue because he took, and by the way, if you looked at the polls at the time, he took 2 big issues that were mired in low single digits. Illegal immigration at the time was 3 to 4% in all the national polls. Trade wasn't even asked on some polls. If you volunteered it, it was an asterisk, less than 1%. He did what politicians never do, which is take an issue that's low in the polls and elevate it, bring people along over time. Usually, they all sound the same for a reason. I saw the polls, people worried about the economy. You're a genius. Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks, because I didn't have an abacus today to read the poll. And anyway, he did, and when you look at things like this, you see how far we've come in the 11 years since he first messaged this, that it's mainstream, but it is important. And I'll tell you, when it became about border security and not just illegal immigration, all of a sudden that animated so many more people who were either skeptical or indifferent. You're like, oh, border security? Okay. You're really talking about illegal immigration and drugs, but they're on board for that. Last thing I want to say about this is a great example of overperforming and just exceeding expectations so early, so wildly, that we sometimes don't talk about this. This was accomplished so long ago. It was accomplished almost a year ago. And even the president will say, my people tell me, 0 crossings? How's that possible? 0? And you look at that famous picture of the bridge that at least Fox News was showing, how many people, now the bridge is a bridge. Cars are driving over it. Nobody lives under it. The whole thing. Now the bridge is a bridge. I love that. And so now we see the bridge is a bridge. And why is this important? Because I don't think we talk enough about this because he checked the box so early. And if the Democrats had even one accomplishment, they'd be talking about it all day long. They'd be talking about it all day long. And I just want to say one last thing about impeaching the president, all of that. I see all these people, I have stood up to Donald Trump. I'm holding him accountable. Well, where is he, jerk? Is he in the big house or the White House? What exactly are the fruits of your embarrassing labor here? What exactly did you accomplish? You spent hundreds of millions of dollars of our money hounding him, prosecuting him, trying to ruin him, his family, his business, his staffers, and divided the country further. So if they are to do that, and they will do that, the progress on all of this stops. I was there. We got there. We had indictments and subpoenas the day we got there. January 20th, 2017, my 50th birthday. You don't have to do the math. I'm 50. I'll be 59 next week. What am I going to do about it? The point is that will be redux all over again. And what it means is it's not just the Democratic Party holding him to account, this guy who got reelected under their noses in all 7 swing states and the popular vote, but all of this stops. And people need to know that.
All right, so we're going to move a little quicker through the second slides because part 2 of today is Benny Johnson and Jill Holman talking with Ashley about housing. We want to make sure there's good time for that, so I'm going to move a little quicker as we go. But Ashley, when we polled people, obviously on the top issues, we asked them, give us your top 2. Inflation and cost of living, economy, healthcare, crime, and border and immigration were clearly the prime issues. These are also kitchen table issues. So these are issues that we can communicate effectively on, and we can build really effective policies, not just within AFPI, but again, the whole movement, the America First movement can do this well. Did you find this encouraging that, you're very close to the states, you know what people are most tuned into. I'm assuming a lot of this is what you knew, but it just gives us really a lot of reason to pile on it.
I think this is exactly what Kellyanne just said, to the point with housing and healthcare. That also is into consideration of your cost of living, right? So it's all tied together. We'll focus on this year from federal policy, state policy, getting that messaging to the voters. That was what we used in a lot of ways to help turn out our voters. And what we will see this election cycle is 37% of the couch potato voter, the no and low propensity voter, are not going to show up this cycle. So it is our responsibility to find the issues they care about the most and motivate them to go and turn out to vote. This will be, as always, a game of inches. It will come down to just a few hundred votes in many of these districts. And it's going to be who can communicate these kitchen table issues the best to motivate them to turn out that will ultimately determine whether or not we keep the House or gain seats in the House, which would be only the 5th time in 100 years that the president's party would gain seats in the House of Representatives. Now, this is a historic president with a historic legacy, so I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic about our prospects. However, it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah. So I'm going to move through the next few slides pretty quickly and just kind of give a brief encapsulation. I encourage you to look at this. We found some interesting anomalies, especially with regard to cost of living for the Hispanic population. And in certain, voter districts and counties, that's very influential. And so what they thought about tax regulation and food staples is really important there. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We also wanted to look, and like Kellyanne was saying earlier, reminding people how bad it was. And so we wanted to see, do people feel the country is stronger, safer, and more secure under President Trump than under President Biden? That answer is yes in all 3 categories. That's why we stacked them up like this. They're all so close. So clearly we trended in the right direction. And as the America First policies develop and the One Big Beautiful Bill ends, we're going to see a lot of improvement in these areas. And Kellyanne covered this actually in her open, that this is the best country in the world, 74% agree, but the American dream is not alive and well for a certain part of the population. But I have very little doubt that as the policies develop, as the wins continue to stack up, which there are wins that don't get talked about enough, but as they develop, we're going to see that trend in the other direction as well. And we're going to have a whole panel on this. So 85%. The thing I found interesting about this stat was that 85% thought it's harder for young people to buy a home. I'll be a bit, I thought there was going to be a little bias of the older generation thinking. It was hard for us too. Every age demographic was within the margin of error on this issue. So I'm just going to, you guys have that, but I want to just kind of highlight the core messaging here. Let's connect with where people are. Let's connect with where they are on the core issues. Let's explain the order of operations. We had to secure the border and fix our international trade to build the foundation for all the other wins. If we hadn't done that, if the president hadn't gone that direction, it would have been a mess. Let's show the results and let's talk about them. That's how we build momentum. Again, call to action is the progress only continues if we stay the course. So as a movement, as a group, we have to make sure that we keep leaning in and that we're working together in unity. We're not expected to be just AFPI. We want to work with everybody who's willing to champion these issues. Kellyanne, thank you so much. You provide such expert analysis. I couldn't thank you enough for it. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'll sacrifice my time.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Raise the IQ difference between me and Kellyanne has got to be a standard deviation. Okay, you said the naughty word, healthcare. I think housing we can win. Housing is right-wing coded, and they're giving us housing. Monogamy moment is giving us actually housing, right? They want permanent renting, and they want no housing, right? They're trying to right-wing code a housing issue. They're handing it to us on silver platter. Healthcare. You said don't get marble mouths on healthcare. Own it. How? What would be your suggestions? I can see it on. See it on the program and in the chat, right? People kind of glaze over. It's so left-wing coded. It's been so Obama-matized, right, healthcare, that people just don't want to touch it. I know you just talked about it, but then what's the solution there?
So I have a whole slide deck on this I'll send to you, and we worked on it in the first Trump term, and then COVID hit, so he never actually announced it, but, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry.
I have this, and I think it builds on a lot of center-right proposals, Benny, that don't give us price controls, that don't give us more government run. You know, when I keep seeing that people are the happiest they've ever been with Obamacare, that's because they put the word Obama in it. It's like, oh, him, I remember him, and he's not Biden, and he's not Harry. The fact is that talk about they broke it, we need to fix it. Remind people that unless you've got a really great employer-sponsored plan, you probably have Obamacare. And that includes wealthy people, middle-class people, families, individuals. Everybody starts with this presumably one-size-fits-all. People are not happy with healthcare. Here's what they want from healthcare. They want affordability is one thing, but it's actually access. It's consistency. It's someone to listen to them. And I will tell you, for whatever you think about most favored nation, I know that there's been 9 deals. Johnson & Johnson is one in the works now. That's coming any day. The president said that on December 19th. The unintended consequence of that could be that we don't do enough to cut out the middlemen. And I think if people don't know what PBMs are, people don't know that pharmacy benefits managers are pocketing a lot of the money. They don't know necessarily that it's the insurance companies that are making the money. And that I hope the savings will come to the benefit of the individual patient. That is the president's goal with these deals. But in the meantime, unless we cut out the middleman, who's better than cutting out the middleman than President Trump? He just goes in and negotiates directly with the heads of state. The democratization of information means he communicates directly with the American people, cuts out the middleman, the mainstream media. Guess who doesn't like it? The middleman. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we use words and that they have policy behind them about consistency, access. The consistency part is important because if your child, God forbid, needs the doctor, you want to know it's going to be the doctor that not just somebody who can access a chart, but the actual doctor that you and your wife have chosen for that child or your children. People want consistency, access, transparency, quality, and they want to not have to use the healthcare system. Remember that. Most Americans want to look at the healthcare system as a break the glass in case of emergency. So I do have some very specific ideas that I'll share. I'm happy to share with you. I don't know why we're afraid of this. So we've almost ceded this issue.
Right? So like it's because people don't know what to say. It's been such a bruised knee for the movement.
I think you start out with
like failure after failure after failure on healthcare policy. It's been so humiliating, for Republicans in Congress that people just don't want to touch. It's Voldemort, right? They don't want to touch it.
But Benny, I think the biggest reason that we lost seats in 2018, 40 of them in the House, was because of health care. And it was because that people just, after saying, I'm against, let's repeal and replace Obamacare, then we get back the House, the Senate, the White House, and can't do the simple thing of repealing and replacing Obamacare with something better. And President Trump, I remember, we had the Freedom Caucus in there. We had the Tuesday group in there, the more moderate people, many of whom have lost their seats since and are on CNN with contracts. But we had everybody in there and couldn't get it done. And the president said, he said to me in the Oval, explain to me how, there were three of us in there, how people who voted to repeal and replace Obamacare 36 times in the House of Representatives, which included at the time Congressman Mike Pence. You voted 36 times to repeal and replace Obama. You got a president not named Obama who's going to do it, and you couldn't get it done. And they lost all these seats in large part because of that. But we need to be on offense. Start with this. Folks, anything the government runs is never fully what you deserve. Never.
Yeah.
They don't run anything well, and they're running your health care. They're telling you which doctor, they're telling you how much, when, who, what, where. They literally, you have to draw it for people. There's the doctor, the patient, and in between is this big blob called Uncle Sam and Big Brother, who should not be between you and your doctor. But I got a whole thing. I'm going to send it to you.
All right. Ashley, you stay put. We're going to bring up Benny Johnson, Jill Holman. Kellyanne, thank you so much. I am so grateful.